It's no doubt that the Budokai Trilogy are three of the most influential, important, and beautifully crafted Dragon Ball games of all time. And today, we're taking a deep dive into each of them. Now, if you guys have been watching me for a while, chances are you've seen some of these videos. But hear me out. I not only decided that before releasing my Tenkaichi series, I'd make a collaboration on my Budokai retrospectives. But also, these three videos were released very early into my YouTube career, and some aspects could have definitely been improved upon. So that being the case, I took this opportunity to go through each of these videos and make some quality changes to the flow and presentation. Also, heads up, that's why I have a different haircut, clothes, and fluctuating in body weight slightly throughout this video. Just wanted to give that disclaimer before the movie starts. Now enjoy this lengthy video on three of the best PS2 games of all time. The original Dragon Ball Z Budokai is one of, if not the most important games that the franchise has ever released, not for the reasons that you might think. You see, a lot of you watching may not remember this game releasing, but if you're around my age, or possibly a little older, then you know just how big that this game was. I can remember watching the original Toonami run of DBZ when I was just a little boy in 2002, and the trailer for this spectacular game dropped. My eyes lit up with excitement because prior to this, at least in North America, all we had was the recently released Legacy of Goku and, well, a PS1 game that must not be named at this time. Needless to say, these were both underwhelming games for a variety of reasons, but this was what every DBZ fan had dreamed of. The characters looked just like the anime, and for an early PS2 game, this was remarkable. The game actually allowed you to do proper combos, and looks as if love and care was actually put into the development. You could transform mid-fight just like the anime. I mean, for this time, it was groundbreaking stuff. But to understand how this game changed the franchise, we need to take a deeper look. And while we're at it, what made this game not so good when compared to later entries? Let's find out. Before we get into the story and the gameplay, we need to talk about the intro. Rock the Dragon is an absolute banger. As a longtime DBZ fan, it hits you right in the feels with that classic after-school Toonami vibe. Dang, I really do miss this theme song. I'm also so glad they went with this instead of Chala, Hey Chala. It's just so much cooler in my opinion. When looking at the available modes, especially for this time, it blew me away. There's a total of 7 modes, one for every Dragon Ball. I absolutely love this, as it was and still is an incredible amount of replay value. In my opinion, this set the blueprint for future Dragon Ball games to come. The modes include Story, which in this case takes place between the Raditz and Cell Saga, for a rather underwhelming runtime, at least on the first playthrough. Next you have Duel Mode, where you can choose to battle a friend or the computer, at whichever difficulty you choose. This is also where all the stages you've unlocked are accessible. Third, a mode loved and missed by oh so many, World Tournament Mode. Here you can choose 3 difficulties: Novice, Adept, and Advanced, and fight to be the best, and earn some prize money along the way. The main difference here is that you can win your fights by either KOing the opponent, as usual, or by ring out, which typically involves strategic positioning of yourself near the edge of the ring, and also avoiding this happening to yourself as well. But if that isn't enough, you also get 4 more modes. Practice Mode is Skill Shop, where you can purchase skills to use for your unlocked characters in Duel and World Tournament. Options Mode, and a super secret 7-star Dragon Ball mode. As I mentioned previously, the story starts off at Raditz. This is probably where they got the idea to almost completely omit the OG Dragon Ball from the game's storyline, as nearly every Dragon Ball game that follows this started at this very same fight. Now, it does actually begin with a Piccolo versus Goku cutscene, which is nice to see. I do wish more games would have this fight in it. At least, in my opinion, this is where the DBZ style fight started, although it is considered OG Dragon Ball still. But I do understand, this is where the story took a turn and becomes more action oriented. But still, how many times do we need to play this exact same story? I mean, it's in basically every single game besides Xenoverse, which is still kind of this story. While dated for today's standard, the cutscenes are also exceptionally well made for their time. There's also episode cards for every level, and even next episode previews when you finish one of the 3 arcs in the game. I love this, and it helped induce those feelings of late night Toonami nostalgia. It certainly feels like they're trying to tell the story, at least much more so than some future games that are just fight after fight. But still, putting myself in the shoes of a first-time DBZ viewer, I would have absolutely no clue what's going on. I mean, the pacing is super fast, and they skip so many crucial moments. It almost feels like a Kai version of DBZ Kai. Now, let's be fair, they do make up for this to a large extent with additional post-game content, but we'll come back to that. As early as the first battle, you will notice that the supers and ultimates are ridiculously difficult to pull off. I always thought these were way too much, especially as a child. While Kamehameha and some of the other characters' more basic attacks are easy enough to pull off by pressing box 4 times and then circle, the majority of everything else is just madness, especially when compared to the ease of later games in the franchise. Legitimately, some of these are hold forward while holding box, release, box, box, hold forward and triangle, then circle. If that sounds complicated, that's not even half of it. You have to do this while trying to not get hit, and the opponent is often blocking, which cancels out the entire attack. That being said, in the beginning, out of frustration, I mostly stuck with just Kamehameha. As I progressed though, I was determined to pull off some of the more trickier techniques. This is where training mode came into play. Seeing the inputs as I pressed them, along with the opponent not blocking or moving in any way, helped me get down the formula. There's also always little capsules on the bottom corner of the screen which coordinate with whatever super that you're trying to do. And if you get close to pulling one off, it will light up. This also helped me realize it wasn't the combinations that were difficult, it was more so the movements of the enemy that made it harder to do. And also the combinations in this game are still a bitch. Returning to the game, melee attacks are easy enough to pull off and feel very good as well. This is definitely where they found their rhythm for future games to come. As games before this, like GT Final Bout, oh, you know, maybe I'll save that for a future review. Let me know in the comments if you want to see it, but spoiler alert, the game is absolute garbage. But almost every character has extremely similar supers, exception of maybe 1 or 2 of their personal moves. Now, I know, reusing moves is common in games with a large roster. But come on, there's 24 characters here. I feel like you could have made every character a little more distinctive. That being said, the continuous blasts and a lot of the special melee attacks are the exact same, and just renamed to fit the character. This is honestly the thing that bothered me the most about this game. Another thing that irked me is that as early as the first fight, you will notice the freaking Kamehameha is yellow. What the hell? I mean, it's just like, why did they do that? I could forgive this, but later in the story mode, you see that Cell's Kamehameha is blue. I mean, for anyone who's not a fan playing this game, who cares? Sure. But for a hardcore fan, or even a semi-casual fan, this will surely bother you throughout the entire game. Also, while we're on Cell, during gameplay, his voice stays the exact same as Imperfect Cell, even when he's in perfect form. Anyway, playing through story mode more, you come to realize, fairly quickly, that it's extremely rare to play as any character besides Goku. There's a fight with Gohan early on, sure, and then a couple fights with Piccolo in the Cell arc, and of course, you have to have the big finale. SS2 Gohan versus Cell. But I'm pretty sure that's it for the main story. The rest is strictly Goku. This again causes a lot of crucial missed moments in the series. Even in the Ginyu portion, where Goku and Ginyu change bodies, the voices stay the same. They couldn't even properly give Ginyu Goku's voice for the battle. I mean, how hard could that have been to do? In my opinion, it would have made a lot more sense to have Vegeta or even Gohan and Krillin fight in this battle. Now, to the game's defense, they do correct a lot of this in post-game story content. But even then, they only really use Piccolo for the Saiyan arc, and then Vegeta for Frieza and Cell arcs, meaning there's still about 20 or 21 characters that are almost completely unused in the game's story. But I do have to say, I really freaking love playing as Super Vegeta in this game. His hair just looks dope to me, and also, it's a form that I feel served enough purpose that it's deserving of being playable transformation in a lot more modern DBZ games. Continuing on with the post-game story mode, notice the levels you previously played and new ones will now open up, allowing you to replay any previous mission of your choosing, and also allowing you to see where these new ones fit in with the story. The coolest feature of this is that there will also be one what-if story for each of the 3 arcs, which is from the main villain of the arc's perspective.
Come on! Get down here, Baldy!
It was really cool that they allowed us to do this. I always love when games give us what-if and alternate scenarios. For Vegeta and Frieza, the stories are basically, in a nutshell, what if Vegeta and what if Frieza won their respective battles against Goku and the Z Warriors. First, even ending with Vegeta turning Super Saiyan in the Saiyan arc, and the second ending with Frieza finally gaining immortality. While these seem like dreamlike scenarios for those characters, for Cells, it's more of a nightmare. This has to be the funniest thing a Dragon Ball game has ever done. Cell legit absorbs Krillin by accident, causing him to mutate and downgrade into basically a weaker Cell Jr. Hilarious as that is, the level ends with Cell fighting Yamcha, of all people, which is actually fairly difficult. Props to Yamcha here. Then getting tri-beamed to death by Tien, only to wake up and the whole sequence was just a nightmare. I do again love this because it really could be canon. Who's to say that Cell didn't have a nightmare? Entirely plausible. Now, as usual, I don't want to spend too much time on the story because, I mean, you guys probably already know it if you're watching this video. So let's just go over what I thought was the worst and maybe the hardest level in the game. And no, it's not the Special Beam Cannon segment, although that is a close runner-up. But for worst, it has to be the Vegeta training level. You know the one. More specifically, the Burst Mode segment. I'm not sure if it's just me, but I hate pulling these off. Something about timing them and then burning off the skin on the palm of my hand just to win this fight, I mean, it doesn't really seem fun for me at all. The fight after kinda sucks too. I mean, you only get 1 health bar to finish off Vegeta, who is not going to take it easy on you. So if you're playing in hard mode or anything above that, it's going to be a really tough fight. Speaking of which, the hardest level is absolutely Gohan versus Cell. Super Saiyan 2 versus Super Perfect. I almost put Frieza versus Goku for this, because that level does suck as well, but when I thought about it, this level took me forever to beat. This man kicked my ass so many damn times though, only for me to finally win in what seemed like a stroke of luck, and then having my damn game freeze right before it saved. So I had to play all over again. You also start on just enough ki to be in Super Saiyan 2, so most of the time within seconds of the game starting, if it hits you even once, you're back to SS1 or even base form. That really can be stressful. Yeah, that reminds me. Transformations. Well, of course, as you guys know, it's a Dragon Ball game, so you can transform into multiple forms per character. This game is where the formula for transformations began, that they will use for years and years to come. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, it works, but if you don't know, basically you charge up to a certain amount of ki bars to transform. If the character has, or has unlocked at this point in the game, multiple forms, then you will transform to whatever form is set for that amount of ki bars. What's interesting about this game in specific though, is that almost every character, and note, almost an asterisk, because not every single one, but almost every character has a transformation. That being unlocked potential for Krillin, or in Hercule's case, high tension. Giving Hercule a transformation is weird in itself, but giving Hercule his own mode, however, that's a different story. To unlock this hidden 7-star mode, you will have to compete in the World Tournament, and beat both the novice and adept difficulties. Not only does each difficulty increase here, but each rank you go up will increase the amount of fighters and the amount of fights that you will have to go through to win. For frame of reference, novice has 3 fights, adept has 4, and advanced has 5. Also, advanced has this weird mechanic where one random fighter skips like 2 or 3 battles. Like, how is that fair in any way? Each increasing difficulty will grant you more and more prize money, which you can use in the skill shop to unlock a variety of things, including supers, items that increase your stats, and also special things like the Legend of Hercule. This mode is silly but really fun. You basically play as Hercule, who is surprisingly powerful, and you fight through all the Z Warriors one by one to get to the big man himself, Cell. Hercule will also have some hilarious one-liners and speeches in between the fights to keep you laughing and to keep the game lighthearted.
What? Already?
The biggest drawback here is that if you do die, you start all the way over from the beginning, which there's about 10 to 12 fights, so you have to play very strategically, especially in the second half where the fights get quite a bit more challenging. There also is no unlockables here for winning, at least as far as I'm aware. Like, in the story mode, you unlock characters and many items from just completing levels. I was kind of expecting some sort of reward for finishing Legend of Hercule on Adept, but I guess Hercule's rants were enough compensation for me.
That was a wimp. You two sick bald turkeys. I'll deal with you both at once.
While you might think it's over there, and for many it probably would be, there's still one more unlockable that we have yet to cover. Great Saiyaman. The inclusion of this character is quite odd to me. I mean, the story doesn't go past Cell, so why do we have a Majin Buu Saga character in the game? To unlock Great Saiyaman, you just have to finish advanced difficulty in the tournament, which, by the way, is disgustingly hard. But if you can do it, there you go. You got Great Saiyaman, which you'll probably never use him because he's a pretty average character, but hey, you did that. One last thing, there's also Dragon Balls that you can collect, which I'm fairly certain give you breakthrough for the specific character of your choosing, meaning you have access to all their techniques in whichever mode you're playing. But I never quite got all 7. My best advice here though is just constantly leave and re-enter the skill shop until they appear in recommended section. Works like a charm. So if you haven't figured it out, let's just recap. What makes this game so important to the franchise? While not perfect, the original Budokai developed a system that changed Dragon Ball games forever. Battle system, while drastically changed over the years and improved upon, still has deep roots in this game, at least for the next 10 years to come. The variety of modes available with post-game replayability surely began here as well. The game is just an overall blast to play, and the storytelling truly made me feel like a kid on a Wednesday night watching Toonami with my parents. If you're around my age and you played this game as a kid, give it a replay. You will not regret it. It really is a game that I'll never forget, and one that sparked my love for DBZ and DBZ games for an eternity. Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2 is not only the most underrated Budokai game, but perhaps the most underappreciated Dragon Ball Z game of all time. Not for the reasons that you might think. Released in the following year from its predecessor in 2003, this game received mixed reviews from critics and fans alike. Some even citing it as an underwhelming sequel, while others completely write off the game due to its extreme and questionable changes from the previous entry. Due to this, it's considered the black sheep of the series, and even was taken off of the Budokai HD collection. This came as quite a shock to me, as I have nothing but awesome memories of playing this game as a kid, and I was even devastated when I realized I couldn't pick this up on the Budokai HD collection. So, that being the case, I replayed it to take an in-depth look at Budokai 2, also to uncover why people hated it, why it's a great game in retrospect, and discussing the ins and outs of the game as a whole. Now, I'm going to begin this review a bit different from the previous, as I want to start with the game's story, Dragon World. But you know, I couldn't do that without covering the main menu first. Budokai 2 follows a similar format of the previous, having 6 initial playable modes with a hidden unlockable 7th mode, which can be only accessed once you've completed the campaign. Now, I do have to point out the main menu screen is underwhelming for sure. Where the first Budokai shined with its awesome art for each mode, this one drops the ball completely. It just feels very basic and lazy. Once you select a mode, however, life flourishes to the game. What a better mode to start with than the infamous Dragon World. Upon the first level, you will quickly pick up on the vast changes they've made from Budokai 1. Goku, who will always be your main character, is the only one who will have a humanoid character design, while the rest will resemble board game pieces to fit the aesthetic here, which I don't really mind as much as I thought I would. First, you will be tasked with choosing an ally. Some stages allow you to choose one, while others will allow you 2. These allies can usually only be characters that you previously unlocked, but they don't necessarily need to be a part of the arc that you're currently playing through. Right off the bat, you can use Buu Saga characters like Adult Gohan or Kid Trunks in the Saiyan arc. Now, this is because they don't aim to follow the canon like Budokai 1 did. The game only very loosely adapts the anime. For instance, not only can you choose characters that take no part in these fights, but in the first level, Raditz and Nappa will arrive searching for the Dragon Balls without Vegeta.
Alright!
What? The following level even introduces Frieza, who lands on Earth as opposed to Namek, in search of the Dragon Balls. And may I add, one of the best looking stages in the game. Damn, that background looks clean. Muscle Tower from the OG Dragon Ball? Dude, this is beautiful. But the third level, which is also Frieza, but this time on Namek, as he should be, is where we finally get introduced to Vegeta as an enemy. Like, what? I understand Vegeta wasn't necessarily a hero in the Frieza arc, but still, introducing him here as a villain is just an interesting choice. Now, before we get any further, I do want to point out, while I understand this can be disappointing, I absolutely love this, especially in retrospective. At this time, it may not have been as repetitive as we know it to be now, but most of the games following this, at least until Xenoverse, simply adapt the Z story over and over and over again. They clearly wanted to go for something different here, and while many didn't like the attempt, I thought it was really cool. There's even some more drastic changes later on, like Frieza and Cell returning in the Buu arc as Majin versions of themselves. Although they're probably just there to give the player someone to fight, and otherwise it makes no logical sense. The addition was refreshing and gives a what-if story feeling to the game. Moving on, the map itself will provide the player with their own choices to make that will largely impact the fights, what you unlock, and can even alternate the route you take in this story. Each player on your team and the enemies will be granted one space to move in each turn. However, aside from just moving toward an enemy to fight them, you are given the choice to take your time, explore, and pick up some valuable perks along the way. These perks including swords, which will increase the player's attack power, and Saiyan armor, which will grant you a boost in defense, as well as capsules that, when obtained, will unlock a skill for you, ranging from support items all the way to a new super attack. Enemies can also come across these, resulting in not only you taking a huge L, but them benefiting. It is quite a cool addition to the game. I like the balance here, you know, the enemies can get some W's too. Most spots will also have hidden items underground, which you can dig for by opting to not move forward for that turn. Here you can find Zenny, which will be spent in a skill shop. Also onions, which increase your movable distance from 1 to 2 spots. And even, of course, Dragon Balls, which can be found easily by locating the Dragon Radar in each level. Also, if you do manage to collect all 7 Dragon Balls, Shenron is summoned, and he'll grant you an actual wish of your choosing. Which, of course, there's limitations to, and I'm saving that for a little bit later in the video. But anyway, all of these extra perks are game changers, as they give you the option to alter your playthrough, and it also rewards exploration, as opposed to going through the same cutscenes a million times, to the point where even a massive fan like myself gets sick and tired of them. Sure, don't get me wrong, This isn't an open world exploration by any means, but maybe for its time, this isn't so bad. Goku, your allies, and the enemies will each have a certain number of lives, which are indicated in the bar next to your character. Meaning, if you beat an enemy, chances are, unless they're a Cyberman, you will have to fight them a few more times to secure the win. This is also relative to the heroes, and if you lose all your health as Goku, you will have to restart the entire level. Whereas if your ally dies, they will just disappear from the map. To avoid this happening, Dende spots will appear on each map, granting an extra life for the character who reaches it. This can also be used by enemies as well, which is quite discouraging in some situations. Damn, Dende, whose side are you on, man? Lastly, there are also areas that will negatively impact your fight. If you so happen to land on a key drop, health drop, or health half spot, you will, as expected, drop key or health at a significant rate, or for the latter, start with half of your health. This is particularly annoying when an enemy you have to beat is just parked there and won't move, no matter how much you bait them. This is far more complex than many other Budokai games. These changes force you to be strategic and creative with how you handle your battles, something many fighting games lack, aside from just Dragon Ball. Now, not only is the story different here, to the point of utter confusion for any Dragon Ball fan, but many of the game's mechanics are extremely altered here. For example, you know how you would typically gain Super Saiyan at the fight with Frieza, and Super Saiyan 3 at the Majin Buu fight, right? And not here, my friend. To unlock Super Saiyan, you will have to choose Krillin as your ally for Stage 3, the Namek portion, and have him purposely die at some point during it. Not only is the situation overly specific, but who the hell is going to choose Krillin over Gohan? Or almost anybody else? I mean, love you, Krill, but come on, dude, let's just be realistic here. Now, this is just one of the many instances here of secret unlockables, and there's way too many for me to list them all. But please take this into consideration. As opposed to other games where skills will be granted based on story progress, you need to use certain characters out of the many allies you'll be offered in a certain way in each level to unlock other characters, transformations, and super attacks. Meaning you could easily miss a lot of these and be stuck with base form characters with no ultimate attacks throughout your entire playthrough. That is actually possible. Now bear with me, please. To the naked eye, that sounds terrible. And in a way, it kind of is. I mean, who wants to be base form Goku against Kid Buu? Trust me, you don't. But at the same time, this incentivizes exploration, story mode replay, and also strategic ways to get through the story mode. Something that many other games are lacking, especially in the Budokai series. So overall, because I don't want to take too much time on just the map, but the thing that people tend to overlook here is that Budokai 2 doesn't follow a linear path like its predecessor. It allows you to customize your own route with your characters of choice. And of course, not everyone's going to agree with me, but I really did enjoy having to work to uncover these secrets that are built into Dragon World. It felt extremely rewarding when unlocking something new. And out of those many things you can unlock, some of my favorites are the super attacks. Now the combat in general feels very refined here, and it's definitely a step up from the original. Punches and kicks feel smoother. Now supers are also much easier to pull off, giving you the option to press 2 buttons, like forward circle, instead of a whole string of commands for the more basic moves like Kamehameha. This is also where the infamous burn your skin off the palm of your hand, attempting to charge up a super comes into play for the first time. I'm not sure if it's just me, but these were excruciatingly difficult to perfect. But regardless, very satisfying when they are. I do much prefer the melee supers, where you just need to press a different button than your opponent does to complete it. It's much less taxing. Just pick a button between circle, X, square, and triangle, and you have a 75% chance of it working to your advantage. If your opponent does get the best of you, however, you will still damage them, just without the finishing blow. A lot of characters' more basic supers, like continuous Kamehameha, similar to the previous entry, will be the exact same, just a different name to fit their character. The same reigns true for the melee supers as well. Unfortunate, but it never really bothered me that much where it affected my gameplay. Most of the ultimates do still require you to pull off lengthy combos for them to activate, but they do feel much more fluid here, if that makes sense. and also less of a hassle. And boy, are they beautiful. I might be crazy saying this, but I almost prefer this animation over the modern stuff. It just looks so freaking clean. Some of my personal favorites are Trunks' burning attack and the Big Bang attack from Vegeta. Just look how cool these are. Now, while the animation is great, it's never really showcased much, as the dialogue here is stripped to just text boxes with some mostly Goku interactions being voiced and minimally animated prior to fights. I feel like this is largely due to the fact that many of your allies will have no right to be in the arcs they're in, so they wouldn't have anything interesting to say to their opponent. Although sometimes they are characteristic of the person you're playing as, like in my second playthrough, Vegeta will say, "It's my fate to defeat Kakarot," to Raditz before battling him. Horrible impression, by the way, I know.
Shut up!
The only time we see what the animation is truly capable of is in the intro. Dragon Ball never fails to have some incredible openings. It has a hard rock riff with no vocals, which is fine in all honesty. It also showcases the characters that you should expect to see, but with a large focus on the Buu arc, including Super Saiyan 3, Goten, Trunks, and all the Majin forms. This is likely because the Buu arc was a new addition to the series at the time, and deserved the spotlight, rightfully so, as the story devotes 5 of the 9 levels to the Buu arc, deliberately flying through the other 70% of the story. This is mostly apparent in what I consider to be, debatably, the worst level in the game, Level 4. This isn't a bad stage by any means, but it is a lengthy one, and there's no way around that. Unlike Frieza, who gets 2 levels, and Buu, who gets a whopping 5, for some reason, they decided to cram the entire Android and Cell sagas into 1 level. Why they could have just made 10 stages instead of 9 and divide these into 2, I have no idea. Not only is it lengthy, but it comes out of nowhere. Goku beats Frieza and he's like, "I smell a cell." And yeah, he just pops up right by Dr. Gero, like 2 seconds later.
I finally found you, Goku.
Also, Dr. Gero has Cyber Rangers? These, unlike other Cybermen, are unavoidable, meaning you have to defeat all of them for your allies to progress, before even touching Gero. They also, for some reason, excluded 19 in swap of Gero. An interesting choice. The game does have 29 characters as opposed to the previous Budokai's 24, but many like Zarbon and 19 are removed, so we technically do get more characters than it would just appear. Anyway, back to level 4. After beating Gero, 16, 17, and 18 just pop out of nowhere.
I am an android created to kill you. Goku, I am going to kill you.
We beat all of them, and then Cell comes out with the Cell Juniors, already in perfect form. Like, whoa dude, slow down. I can't process all of this at once. This, unfortunately, means that we lack the earlier transformations of Cell and Frieza. An interesting choice by the devs, but Buu was clearly the primary focus here. Again, I still enjoyed this stage, and I had half a mind to place Stage 7, the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, as the worst, because that entire stage is a maze, where Goku is confined to a corner for the entirety of it. But I love the backdrop, and Gotenks was so sick to play as. Next, in terms of best level, although I do love Stage 2, and pretty much every level in this game is awesome. We're nitpicking here. But overall, I'll have to give this to level 8. Now in Stage 8, you fight Super Buu with Gohan and Vegeta on your team. Seems normal, right? Well, instead of just having Gohan get absorbed, and then Goku and Vegeta becoming Vegito, you have to use Goku to reach Supreme Kai to grab the Potara, and then reach Vegeta to fuse into Vegito, all after you fight him with Gohan and get absorbed. This is probably the most accurate level to the actual story, as this is the general idea of how the events go down. However, on my first playthrough, I couldn't reach Vegeta in time for him to be decimated by Buu, as there is a huge difficulty spike around this time. So I had to take him on alone as Goku, and that's it. The game will not allow you to become Vegito if Vegeta dies. Although I had to wait a bit longer to play as my guy here, it allows for alternate endings to the level based on your actions and how well you plan things out. Freaking genius. At least this allowed my guy Tien to get a little shine. Lastly, the hardest stage is without a doubt the finale against Kid Buu. The difficulty spike here is abysmal, Kid Buu is an absolute monster. His health bar is enormous, and he barely even lets you hit him. He gains attack or defense boosts every few turns, and you have to find specific Popo carpets to even reach him in the first place. I forget Popo carpets. Popo carpets are as what you expect. Little carpets with Mr. Popo standing next to them. They will transport you to different areas on the map. Anyway, that's really just about it. They're pretty simple. Out of the many Popo carpets, try saying Popo carpets 3 times fast. Out of the many Popo carpets, there are 3 that will spawn you to Kid Buu's area, 2 of which are guarded by Frieza and Cell. At first you might think, well, I'll just take the easy one, right? Kid Buu is so difficult that likely your Goku and Vegeta won't be enough. You'll need to fight him, back out, and go to Dende spots to heal, which are conveniently placed, you guessed it, right by the dynamic duo themselves. Also, by Frieza, there's the Z Sword, where if you reached it, you get an attack boost for Goku and Gohan, incentivizing you to explore even further. When you do get to fight him, it's very difficult to pull off higher transformations, like Super Saiyan 3, because Buu is constantly up your ass. The key here is to use Vegeta, get his health down a bit, and then finish him off with Goku, because the villains will not regain health until you've beaten them fully. Even if Kid Buu is low on HP, this guy is still a damn menace. So take your time here and eventually you'll pull it off, I promise. Upon completing the story, assuming you have all the Dragon Balls, you will be granted 1 wish from Shenron. These can be either Breakthrough, which grants you all the attacks for a specific character, or Babidi's Spaceship, which is the 7th mode of the game. Babidi's Spaceship is the first one you should pick, because you'll need it to unlock other characters. And it was pretty fun. Nothing to write home about though. Basically, there's 4 stages requiring you to do something like beat up an enemy as many times as you can in a row, get as many hits on an enemy as possible, or deflect a Ki Blast as many times as you can in the time frame. Doing these will increase the energy that goes into reviving Buu. The more energy you acquire from the stage, the more likely you will be to unlock a new character, like all of the Buu forms and their attacks. Also Deborah, and even Absorption for Super Buu. Now, Absorption is so damn cool. Like, they should definitely bring this back. Buu absorbs a random fighter when this is pulled off, creating some really cool, unique moves for him. Although Cell absorbed Buu still gives me nightmares to this day. When unlocked, other characters can fuse as well, including Gotenks, Jito, and some what-if fusions like Goku and Tianxia. These characters are typically OP and super fun to use in modes they're applicable for. If it's a Metamoran fusion, you will have to press the buttons displayed in a timely manner. If you do fail to do so, you will become the incorrect version of the fusion, even showing Piccolo giving you the stank face, like in the anime. You can't do any supers in this form, so you have to wait out the given time limit, which is pretty short. Or just give Sully hands like I did. Potara, however, has no time limit, but you need to choose a button and hope the comm doesn't choose the same one. If they do, however, they will break the Potara, and you will not be able to use it again for that entire fight. Now, as promised, I'm going to return to the mode selection to go over the rest of the modes that we haven't touched on yet, including, first off, Duel Mode. Now, Duel Mode is what you expect. You can play against a comm, a friend, or for some reason you can have 2 computers fight each other. Alrighty. What I really want to look at here though is the stage selection. This game offers some incredible stages that look so damn pristine. Personally, I love the snow stage that has the callback to Dragon Ball with Muscle Tower in the back, and the Red Ribbon Army base, which looks so awesome. These all have destructible environments, by the way, and the animations for these are amazing. My favorite one is the Red Ribbon Army base. Just look how cool this is. You also get training mode where you can duel and practice your moves or partake in a tutorial of the game's mechanics as Goten. I could see these being really useful for a first time player, and I love how different characters teach him different moves. Next, options mode allows you to control the difficulty of the game and set duel time limits as well as some other in-game options. The skill shop is where you can set skills to be used for your characters or purchase skills from Bulma that can be used in any mode with the Zenny you earn from Dragon World. And of course, last but not least, my favorite mode of all time, World Tournaments. This mode is one that resonates with me heavily, as I used to always love playing this with my friends as a kid. As expected, there are 3 difficulties: Novice, Adept, and Advanced, but the latter 2 need to be unlocked by acquiring a certain amount of characters. To get Advanced, however, you will need to unlock every single character, which incentivizes a second playthrough or third of the game, as you will need to use characters you unlocked in the first run in earlier stages to acquire new characters. You can also play through this as many times as needed to collect the Dragon Balls, to get breakthroughs for all your characters, and unlock new skills. There's always something new to find, which is what I love about Dragon World. For instance, in Stage 1, you need to play as Vegeta, a character not unlocked until later, to acquire Nappa. And Stage 4, you need to beat Cell as Gohan to unlock the Great Saiyaman. Once you get everyone, you can play Advanced, and oh man, it's every bit as hard as the original. This time, there's an even bigger bracket, utilizing all of the game's characters. To win, you can either defeat an opponent by draining their HP, or by ring out, which you will need to strategically position yourself near the edge of the ring to do so. Also, you will receive a runner-up prize for second place in the Adept and Advanced difficulties. I've always loved tournament modes in Budokai games, and this one you can play with friends as well to see who comes out on top. What an absolute masterpiece. I truly hope Tenkaichi 4 doesn't let us down. But before we do wrap up, I want to briefly discuss what made this game so great, and also why it's the most underrated Budokai of all time. Everyone that hates on this game tend to overlook that it's meant to be different. The devs clearly didn't want to give you Budokai 1 Part 2. They wanted to allow you to make your own choices and your own routes in the game to create your own rewarding victory. The uniqueness of Budokai 2 is completely overshadowed to some people by just the board game layout of the story mode, that they completely miss all the great aspects of it that I brought up throughout this video. In short, while playing this as a kid, I loved it, and as an adult, honestly, I think I liked it even more. Looking in retrospect at all the games that came after this, at least until Xenoverse, they were the exact freaking same with better graphics and slightly different modes and very minimal changes. We got that in Xenoverse, but not much before. This is what we wanted the whole time, guys. I'm telling you, give it a replay, it is freaking awesome. But in short, the main things I love about Budokai 2 is the large amount of what-if scenarios that can be created, the strategy that is so unique to this game, and building your own route in certain levels. These are all things that brought me back to this game, and these are all things that will make me revisit it a few years down the road. DragonBallZ Budokai 3 is not only undoubtedly the most highly praised Budokai game, but perhaps one of the best Dragon Ball Z games of all time. And not for the reasons that you might think. Releasing the following year from the controversial Budokai 2 in 2004, this game received much higher reviews than its predecessor and is often praised for the amount it did to improve upon it, beyond just graphics and presentation. Because of this, Budokai 3 often makes it into the top 5 or even top 3 rankings of best DBZ games of all time. I, as well, would agree with this statement. Having not played the Budokai series since the late 2000s, and always considering this to be a notch above the rest. But having recently played both of the previous entries, I came here with a clear mind and goal to take an in-depth look at why so many people love this game, how it improved upon the groundwork laid out in the earlier titles, if it truly holds up as one of the best games that Dragon Ball has to offer, also discussing the ins and outs of the game as a whole. Now, while I would love to just jump right into the campaign, I do have to quickly point out just a few aspects of the game that really stuck out to me. In terms of design, the menu does a great job at grabbing your attention. It features a majority of the cast, which are all squeezed into one tiny vehicle, a sight to see on its own, with Goku narrating a brief description of each of the playable modes.
Master your skills so no one can beat you.
It does continue the tradition of the previous entries, having 6 initial playable modes with a secret 7th mode that's only unlockable upon completion of the campaign. What does not follow that same format, however, is the story mode, Dragon Universe. The story will start off at the fight with Raditz.
What?
Or wait, does it actually? That depends. Upon entering Dragon Universe, you will immediately notice the major changes they've made here. While Budokai 2 tried to switch things up with its board game layout that allows you to incorporate side characters of your choice, 3 takes that even further beyond and creates 11 distinct story modes, each of them tailored to one specific character. You will also find that most of the other characters, which gives a grand total of 38, at the exclusion of fusions, can be obtained by completing specific battles with certain characters, although many will be only unlockable through exploration and very specific routes in a second playthrough, like Broly or Omega Shenron for instance. This is awesome, because you get to experience the Z story through each character's unique perspective, something that at least in many cases, aside from maybe Supersonic Warriors, we don't have the opportunity to do. The problem with this though is that the stories will only focus on the major battles of each character respectively. So that being said, some characters will have shorter and sometimes drastically short storylines, given they don't play as significant of a role in the story or maybe become irrelevant due to some major power scaling issues that DBZ is notorious for. Now, while I do want to discuss each of these stories in detail, for me to do that, I need to first discuss some of the massive upgrades. And to start, Budokai 3 adds a flight mechanic. No, not just mid-battle. Off the bat, they give you the ability to fly freely around a brand new map, where you can choose to either explore various landscapes or simply just go to your next mission, which will always be located by a little red dot on the minimap. If you do choose to take your time progressing and explore a bit, you will unlock various items, ranging from new supers to support items, which can help you in different ways during battle. While this is not entirely necessary, because you will get many of your character's supers and transformations from simply progressing through the story, also unlocking them at more appropriate times as opposed to Budokai 2, there is still a plethora of other skills that will make it well worth your while, including supers that may only be relevant to characters who don't have their own story. Now, while on the topic of capsules, membership cards are a new addition to the game that can be located in a very similar way. These cards will have different tiers, ranging from green to the highest tier, black. These allow you to purchase higher tier capsules from the skill shop that you may not have found while exploring. But before you even ponder about purchasing these skills outside of your character's playthrough, Zenny must be obtained, which can also be located at random spots on the map. Moving on though, what would a Dragon Ball game be without the ability to collect Dragon Balls? In regard to these, there will always be 7 in every story, but only a set number are obtainable in each portion. So, to make this brief, if you finish an arc without finding them all, well, you are just out of luck. Time for a third playthrough, or a fourth. However, as difficult as this may sound, given the size of the map, these can be found pretty easily by first locating the Dragon Radar, which is in different locations in every story. But if 7 are collected upon the completion of the story, you'll be granted 1 wish from Shenron, with a bit more variety than the previous game. All in all, I had a great time collecting these, and upon entering each new arc, I always made sure this was the first thing I did. Doing this led me to find many new capsules that I may not have come across otherwise. In certain situations while exploring, you will come across an unmarked location, either showing as 3 question marks, or sometimes it will be named like West City or Central City. These will oftentimes lead you to simply additional dialogue. There will always be some dialogue before a battle, but it's decent at best. There isn't any cutscenes, and in a way, it's even downgraded from Budokai 2, because their mouths don't even move. I will say though, if you do choose to search for these, some will not just explore more of the story, but also enhance it and add a bit of flair, introducing some really cool what-if scenarios, like Vegeta landing at the Kame house in the Saiyan saga, and doing a bit of flirting with Bulma, or Yamcha and Bulma breaking up. Coincidence? I doubt it. I can understand how some people would want proper cutscenes in the game, especially since we were lacking those again in Budokai 2, but personally, I know the story like the back of my freaking hand, so unless they're adding something vastly different to it, like Xenoverse for instance, I don't really care that much. Although still, Having the Buu Saga cutscenes would probably have been a nice touch. There are mini battles called battle points, which you can find by exploring or by simply holding R1 to sense for an enemy's key. These are usually mini bosses, but can also sometimes be a more interesting battle, like Metal Cooler in the Cell Saga, or Teen Gohan. Upon beating these and other major battles in the story, you will acquire experience points, which can be used to level up each respective character. Each subsequent level will become increasingly harder to reach, requiring more experience points as you progress. But they reward you with 1 skill point per each increase in level. Now you could use these skill points to increase distinct stats, like health, ki, attack, guard, arts, ability, and calm. Upon research, I believe it increases the overall power of your character if you're fighting them as a calm in duel mode. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but regardless, I found it to be basically useless. Personally, I attributed most of my points to health and attack, then dispersed the rest of them more evenly across my less utilized stats. To sum up the level system here, I truly enjoyed it implemented in this game. Although Kakarot undoubtedly expanded upon this in so many ways, don't get me wrong, there is still something really charming about the simplicity, and especially for its time, this was so cool. Another thing you will notice on your first playthrough is the changes to the combat. The combat system has leveled up so much, to the point where I was genuinely shocked at the improvements from Budokai 2. And I mean, yeah, for the most part, this still holds up today. You can now teleport by holding guard in the direction of your opponent as they're about to land a hit, or by knocking back your opponent and performing a teleport chain, which looks so badass. I couldn't get enough of it. Not only that, but you can also counter teleport when an enemy teleports, and then teleport on top of that. Yeah, it gets crazy at times, but trust me, these are so much fun to pull off. Now, aside from teleporting, you're also granted the ability to dodge, instead of just blocking or sidestepping, by tapping guard as a hit is about to land. And honestly, this looks and feels so smooth. I was genuinely really impressed here. In addition, beam struggles are also introduced here, and can be activated if 2 supers are triggered at the same time. Now, I'm usually not a huge fan of spinning the joystick until my palms bleed, but damn, these feel so much smoother than Budokai 2. Just make sure not to do it too close to the opponent. Aside from beam struggles, super attacks are very similar to the previous entry, where you can decide to either deliver them at the end of a lengthy combo, or just hit forward or backward circle. Although, word of advice, you do need to time these fairly well because the com will sidestep you frustratingly often. But in contrast, the ultimates get a major overhaul here. Beyond us are the days of maneuvering lengthy combos like forward square, triangle, triangle, forward square, circle. In place of that, we get arguably the most impactful change to the combat system, as well as unarguably the most controversial for its time. Hyper Mode and Dragon Rush. Hyper Mode is a temporary transformation that makes it so you perform special attacks. While in Hyper Mode, your ki will drastically deplete, but also freeze at wherever you entered it. Meaning that if you have 1 ki bar left, you can use a 5 ki bar attack, but you better be fast. This is why I recommend having max ki before using this mode, because you will miss some specials. Now, if the enemy is knocked back while in hyper mode, it will activate Dragon Rush, but the duration of this will be left up to chance. After the first combo, you will be prompted to choose one of the 4 shape buttons, and hope your opponent doesn't choose the same. If they do, however, your Dragon Rush will end prematurely. You will do this up to 3 times, each subsequent time losing the previous button you chose as an option, ultimately turning it from a 75% chance to only a 50-50 shot of it going in your favor. But if you are lucky enough to experience the entirety of Dragon Rush, you will finish with a devastating blow. On occasion, this will even grant you access to a character's ultimate, like Goku's Warp Kamehameha, or Vegeta's Final Flash. Now, I say this is the most impactful change to the combat because, well, it changes the entire dynamic of the fight. But, and this is a really thick but, after playing for hours on end, especially if you're playing for 100%, this Dragon Rush gets very, very repetitive, annoying, and tedious. It also doesn't help that everyone's Dragon Rush is nearly exactly the same. In the end, I found myself going, ugh, not again, when I accidentally pulled one of these off instead of an ultimate, which will happen more often than you think. Now, ultimates, on the other hand, are absolutely beautiful and much more rewarding in my opinion. Not only have the graphics improved on the previous game, but the method of getting an attack win is much less taxing. Instead of peeling off the skin of your palms by spinning the joystick, you are required to hit the X button when the meter is full, or at least as close to it as you can get, a total of 3 times. The person with the bar that's most full at the end will win, and assuming that's you, you will be rewarded with higher damage, and in many cases, an awesome destruction sequence, culminating in the entirety of the stage becoming the destroyed version of it, granting you a brand new landscape. Now, I really do love these destroyed landscapes because the sequences are so cool to see, and I also much prefer the new method of filling the meter over the joystick version. Some of my favorite are Goku's Spirit Bomb when in Super Saiyan, transitioning it to Super Dragon Fist, or my boy Trunks' Burning Slash, which is so damn clean. Now that we discussed at least the majority of the gameplay, let's start to dive into the story modes. Now, I don't want to take too much time on this part because I don't typically cover the story details, especially for DBZ, as it's the same story over and over again, but there are a significant amount of changes here in Budokai 3, so my strategy is as follows. I'll be deciding the best and worst stories the game has to offer, while explaining my reasoning for such. The other 9 I will touch on briefly, just for the sake of the length here. Anyway, that being said, coming in at my choice for the best campaign is, of course, Son Goku. Now that's probably a very obvious choice for some of you, but it was actually a bit more difficult than you might think, as second place has a very similar story, and I even like some of their combat better. But in the end, Goku's story is by far the most complex. Not only is it the longest, but you can also acquire well over a third of the game's roster just through this campaign alone. That's not even including the fusions and transformations that are unlocked here. Through Goku's playthrough, especially if it's your first, you will uncover many of the game's secrets and unlockables. And there is a lot here, spanning from Raditz through Kid Buu. But while that story is lengthy and great in itself, the second playthrough is what really did it for me. Many of these characters will have some sort of secret path on their second playthrough you can take that branch off from the main story and bring you to the what if or even movie/GT realm, adding a lot more variety and tons of replayability. Needless to say, Goku's is no exception. Not only will you have the ability to unlock an alternate ending by defeating Kid Buu with the Spirit Bomb, unlocking Oob, but upon a second playthrough, you can also unlock hidden characters like Bardock and even Kid Goku by traveling to Gohan's house after Raditz, but before Nappa. And if you know how Dragon Ball's story works, that's a very short period of time. You can also choose to fight Cooler and even Super Saiyan Vegeta in place of Frieza on the Namek arc, or even Broly and Omega Shenron, by completely bypassing the Kid Buu fight and taking an alternate route at the end of the story. But trust me, there are extremely specific measures you have to take to unlock this, and it is rather confusing at times. You will first have to stumble upon Hercule in the desert section at a very specific point in the story, only to continue to the Buu saga, fighting Buu with Vegito, who is absolutely incredible in this game, plays so smooth. I mean, look at those damn high kicks. Later, fighting Buu inside Buu, which is a freaking awesome stage, might I add. And then later finding out I unlocked a brand new route in the story. Now, if you do choose to take this route, this is where you'll come across some of the hardest battles that the game has to offer. And that being said, while Broly is an absolute god, and Kid Buu is still a straight freaking menace, Omega Shenron is definitely, without a doubt, the hardest battle that I personally had in Budokai 3. To begin, his health is in an entirely new range from what I had seen at the time, and his attacks will absolutely decimate you. Though Broly is of similar strength, and you even get the privilege of starting off with Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta here, the timer on this fusion is insanely low, like 15 seconds low, and Hyper Mode will deplete this even more rapidly. That being said, it is almost imperative that you hit him with a full power 100 times Big Bang Kamehameha to win. And even still, you will immediately regress to base form after this, having next to no supers in your arsenal, aside from Super Saiyan 4, which will be extremely hard to attain due to Omega never giving you a minute to charge up. Strategy is absolute key here for victory, and if you hope to unlock the ultimate bad guy. To sum this up, I absolutely love when games throw us a curveball like this, giving us what-if stories that make us discover new secrets and unlock new routes for our character to take, whatever they may be. And that is why Goku's is the most impactful and best story in the game for me. Now, while I do want to only mention the best and worst in the game, I do feel a necessity to briefly touch on the second best story in the game, as it is very similar. The Saiyan Prince Vegeta. First off, I haven't touched on this yet, but the soundtrack in Vegeta's story is absolutely so hype. It just fits his character so damn well. Otherwise, Vegeta's story is very much the same as Goku's, just with a few less unlockables here, and by a few I mean maybe like 10 less characters. But there are very similar side routes. For instance, you still get to fight Cooler and Broly. You just probably already unlocked them in Goku's story, and I'm not even entirely sure you can unlock them in Vegeta's story in the first place. Regardless, most characters, even those who don't have specific reasons for second story playthroughs, will still have some secrets to them, like Kid Gohan, where you can choose to fight Goku as a first battle, in place of Piccolo, which unlocks Grandpa Gohan's house. One of my absolute favorite stages in the game. I said it once, I'll say it again, Grandpa Gohan's house is awesome. Or others like Krillin will have you play through the entirety of his story twice, but the second time around will grant you access to the Cell Saga, where otherwise, for some reason, his story will end at the Namek arc. Now real quick, I know Krillin kind of peaked in the Namek arc, but we gave Yamcha, freaking Yamcha, a Buu arc fight. Yamcha! I mean, remember when Krillin tried to stand up to Buu at the Lookout? This game was already reaching enough giving Oob a damn story mode. We couldn't just give Krillin that fight to top it off. I mean, come on, that sounds pretty reasonable. Or for characters like Piccolo, you can unlock Hercule by triggering a secret cutscene and then flying to West City directly after. Although it is worth mentioning, characters like Yamcha and Tien will have very straightforward and quick stories, due to them not having any major battles past the Saiyan arc. And Broly's, while a cool and fun addition, being entirely too easy, as you could simply demolish most of your opponents. At least that's pretty accurate. Now, if you haven't already guessed, the worst story is none other than Oob. There's nothing wrong with Oob as a character. I quite like him actually, but the story is just so underwhelming. While you can find a lot of Majin Buu's supers here, if you're into that character, all you do is fight Goku, Majin Buu, and then Goku again. He also doesn't have many attacks, and given that he's introduced in the very last episodes of the series, it seems nearly pointless to include him in this. It would have made a lot more sense if they included characters like Baby in the game to fight Maju. But that being said, I do appreciate them giving him some screen time and letting you play as a character that is otherwise not shown much outside of GT. Upon completion of a story, however, assuming you have simultaneously collected all 7 Dragon Balls, then Shenron will be summoned, granting you 1 wish out of 3. I will say I do like these options better than the previous game. Firstly, they are tailored to a specific character, so you'll get all 11 breakthroughs if playing through the stories. In fact, breakthroughs are the only ones here really worth getting, as they give you the ability to use every super the character has. And especially considering how important second playthroughs here are, I kind of abuse this. The other 2 options will typically be a skill or memories of the character, which, if I haven't explained yet, are the entire collection of character dialogue that reenact a scene or battle from the anime. I personally don't care for it, but I typically got them upon finishing a second playthrough, just to say I did. After doing this 10 or 11 times, or 30 if you're grinding like I was, you will unlock the 7th mode in the game, Dragon Arena, which, if you haven't guessed, can only be unlocked by completing every character's story. Aside from Dragon Arena, which will be narrated by Commander Red, a really cool touch, allows you to fight the entire roster with any character of your choice, and the enemies can be at whatever level you choose. But they won't all be available from the start. The more you level up, the stronger the enemies you fight will be. Now, this is definitely the most efficient way to upgrade your character's stats, especially your favorites who aren't playable in Dragon Universe. You can even upgrade your Dragon Universe character much faster here as well. But perhaps the most important aspect of this mode is its plethora of unlockables, which are only obtainable through new additions to the franchise, called break-in events. Break-in events are randomly triggered when choosing a character to fight. meaning it can happen every second fight or it could happen every 10th fight, obstructing the original opponent for a brand new one. Think Super Smash Bros. System for unlocking new characters. The only difference is every 5 levels or so will be a different skill. Let me explain. While highly limited, as you can only unlock Cyberman and Cell Jr. by completing one of these, specifically while fighting an opponent between levels 31 and 35, and 66 and 70 respectively, I actually quite like this format, and would love to see it return to a newer Dragon Ball game. That being said, I would have liked if they had more characters available for unlock here, aside from just these 2 bozos, but if you're 100%ing it, it's a must. And you also can unlock other important skills like We Got a Power or Sparking, which actually increases your World Tournament prize money. Speaking of World Tournament, you can also unlock the Cell Games Tournament here, by beating Cell in a level 51 through 55 break-in. It's hard to reminisce on any Dragon Ball Z retro game without bringing up World Tournament, one of the best modes that Dragon Ball has ever brought to us, and this game is no exception, even allowing you to invite up to 8 of your friends to play, which was so fun back in the day. There will be 3 main difficulties, but only Novice is available from the start. To unlock the later 2, you must unlock a certain number of characters to fill the tournament, of course. Then beat the prior tournament difficulty, which will allow you to purchase it in the skill shop. You can also beat enemies by draining their HP as usual, or by ring out, by strategically positioning yourself near the edge of the ring, and timing your attacks well. Also, some of these matchups will even make for some really interesting what-if interactions.
Such a resemblance.
Upon winning Advanced, you will be granted the highest portion of prize money, and given the opportunity to fight in the Cell Games, assuming you unlocked it. Now the Cell Games is just like any other tournament, except there's no rules. So you can use, well, fusions. Fusions return again from Budokai 2, consisting of the same timed events the previous game did for Batara and Metamoran respectively. Although there are no what-if fusions, which is a real bummer. We do get some newly added fusions to the mix, like Super Saiyan 2 and Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, which have some awesome finishers. It is worth noting Absorption also returns here, which will transform Super Buu and grant them some attacks. I do like the previous game's version much better though, as I think there is more characters to absorb, although maybe I just got the same ones over and over again. Bad RNG. Now, when talking about all the modes, we cannot of course forget about dueling, which allows you to fight against a comm, a friend, or again, watch 2 bots duke it out. Yikes. What I really want to talk about here is the stage selection, which, although missing Muscle Tower, do make a huge upgrade. It's difficult for me not to marvel over how beautiful some of these are, and I simply just love the art style. I kept changing my mind on which were my favorite, because I genuinely love all of them for different reasons. But my top 2, at least at this time, are Grandpa Gohan's house and Inside Buu. Grandpa Gohan's house brings me back so much nostalgic vibes and gives you that OG Dragon Ball feel. Fully equipped with Gohan's house, that classic terrain, and even a giant fish like Kid Goku caught in the first episode. Not to mention an awesome destructive environment sequence. Now the Inside Buu stage was so sick. They definitely did not need to add this here, but they did anyway, and I love them for it. It's just so unique, and I really like the feeling of being inside. You can also change the strength and difficulty of your duel opponents in option mode, where you can also change the settings, duel time, adjust the screen and sound, as well as manually save if you want to do that for some reason. The skill shop is where you go to spend Zenny you've collected through World Tournament or through Dragon Universe. You can also, interestingly enough, trade skills with a second player. Upon entering the skill shop, you will notice it is hosted by Launch this time, who will change from her good to her bad side at random. Also, this leads to some hilarious dialogue.
Don't be such a tightwad. Buy some more now.
You can find new supers, ultimates, skills, and items to help you during battle. And you can also edit them here to have them equipped to your character of choosing. Lastly, practice mode is similar to the previous game, as you will have 2 options. Practice and training. Training, which is broken up into chapters, will teach you the basics and eventually some more advanced techniques as well. These will mostly follow Gohan as he ages, but will also include a few other characters in later tutorials. I do definitely recommend doing some of these, as the new combat can be tricky to get acquainted with at first. Also, if you finish all the chapters here, you'll be granted a skill called Bibbity's Pot. Always knew that guy was smoking something. But before we wrap up here, let's briefly discuss why this game was so good. Ahead of its time even. How it improved upon the groundwork laid out in earlier titles. If it still holds up as one of the best games that Dragon Ball has to offer. And if I personally enjoyed it. Well, let me just start by saying Budokai 3 absolutely blew my expectations out the water. I truly did not expect to be so captivated by this game and love it as much as I did. Even after completion of it, knowing I had to start the video, I did not want this game to be over. What made this game so good for me, personally, and I'm sure this holds true for a lot of you as well, is the explorability, giving you that taste of what flying around the world as a Z Warrior actually feels like, the drastically improved combat system, aside from Dragon Rush, of course, and the plethora of secrets that you can uncover, giving you more freedom than any DBZ game that came before it. In short, this game took what Budokai 1 did best and what Budokai 2 did best and combined them, giving you a near perfect Dragon Ball Z experience. The only things I have to criticize are Dragon Rush, which is really frustrating and repetitive at times, and also the fact the stories skip around so much, giving you no idea what's happening if you're new to the series. But that being said, the game is not perfect. Not many things are, but it is pretty damn close and a great attempt at a Dragon Ball Z game in 2004. And I loved it. I absolutely love this game. I'm going to play it again in probably 2 years or so. Let me know what you guys think, and if you haven't played this game yet, I highly, highly recommend it. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this collaboration. If you guys did make it this far into the video, damn, you're an absolute legend. Comment below so I know you did. And yeah man, I'll see you guys next time. Like, comment, subscribe, and let me know if you're looking forward to the Tenkaichi retrospectives. Peace.